Hello everyone and welcome to the second webinar in our series, Sustainability and Climate Change in Northern Ireland. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Chris McCallum, who currently works as a postdoctoral researcher at the Letterkenny Institute of Technology in conjunction with the Bryden Centre. Chris is a Queen's University graduate in chemical engineering. He's also achieved an MPhil and doctorate at Queen's University also, which focused on utilising energy from renewable energy sources. It was during Chris's PhD that he started COVET CLR alongside two other PhD students. COVET was created to form sustainable networks with innovative solutions to issues, the first of which is to make coffee more sustainable. Could I ask everyone to ensure their mics are muted for the duration of the talk and should be unmuted when you're called to ask your question. Questions can be asked verbally using the raise your hand function or can be typed in the Q&A section. Video is also inactive the duration of the webinar, and the webinar will also be recorded and made available via the Biological Sciences website and other social media channels. Presentations will also be emailed at the end of the webinar. So that's all from me. Thanks for attending, and I'll pass you over to Chris.
Thank you. Hope everyone's having a good day, and I will now see if technology will play ball with me. So I'm here to discuss today with you sustainability and climate change, but it's more about the small changes that each of us can make and the difference that all adds up to. So just to kind of take you through this here, which is then what I've been thinking of over the past wee bit. So if we'll take everything as just your yearly kind of bill, as it were. So we'll start here, your year after rent, you have £8,000 now, and then you spend £4,000 on food, spend another £1,000 on heating, £2,000 on your car fuel, some more on clothes, some on electronics. You spend it on a wee cheeky flight to go to London to watch a musical maybe. You're 500 in the red, and you go, oh no, that's a bit bad. And you go, okay, I'll be better next year. The next year rolls around, you spend a bit more on food. It's a bit colder, so you spend a bit more. You want to heat that student house up maybe a bit more. Spend a bit more on clothes because you're going out more. You need a new phone, so you spend a bit more, and then you go on that big flight somewhere else, and you realize you've just went even more into the red. And then the next year, you spend a bit more on everything again. Now, so what would happen if, it wouldn't be so bad if it was just this period, if it was just that 3-year period. But then, say that happened every year for 40 years, with every year the debt getting slightly bigger. So it went from 500 to £5,000 to 8,000 to 20,000. To where at a point you were living 4 months in your overdraft every single time and never paying that overdraft off. What would the bank do to you? The bank probably would foreclose on you after about 3 years. It wouldn't have stopped at that point. But this is the reality of what we're doing to the planet now. So in 1970, we for the first time went over what the Earth produced in a single year. So now what we're doing is we're in our overdraft with the Earth. So World Overshoot Day is the day we pass everything that the world produces for that year. And you can see all the accounts and see how it works. But it's the idea of we at some point are going to have to pay the piper. At some point, we either need to create another half a world or we need to live more sustainably. So you can look at Elon Musk and all these other guys here going, let's go conquer another world. That's fine. Reality is there's one planet. Let's just live with it. So this is another little thing here, which is the GDP per person versus the CO2 per person. So the little blue in the bottom is, you can kind of see the world as a total. It's slightly smaller than everywhere else because the GDP is lower. And as you can see in the green, there's Ireland. As the GDP's increased along the bottom, the CO2's increased. It's slowly starting to fall down now. The UK is decreasing slightly, and Sweden's decreasing. Sweden's doing the best job out of any EU country. It's not just because I love the Swedes that I've just picked Sweden there. It's because Sweden tend to do the best job at the minute. So that sounds great. That looks like we're doing a really good job, and we're, as the economies are growing, we're slowly taking down tons of CO2. And then you look at this, which is the CO2 emissions per person and the GDP per person. It's not that the CO2 is decreasing, it's that the GDP is rising so rapidly that we're starting to get this happen. And then you'll see it from economists. It's great. We're getting the GDP to come. The GDP is still increasing, but CO2 is coming down. No, the ratio is changing, but it's not what we're seeing here. And keep in mind that these statistics can continually change, and you can massage statistics and do all sorts of things to show it. But the reality is the more energy we use as a person, the more trips we make, the more time we spend in our houses, the more electronics we need, the more paper we need, the more of everything. It requires more energy. So this here shows the energy use per person increasing and the CO2. Ireland is a lovely linear curve there. Just as the energy starts to increase, so does the CO2 per person. The UK is kind of a muddle in the middle there. They've slowly started to try and decarbonize without getting much energy. In Sweden, as people have started to use more energy, that CO2 has come down. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can use less energy. Don't leave the fridge door open all the time, which is what I'm continuously told, because I am guilty of that. Don't make as many trips to places, and don't leave the light on in the room. Don't leave things on standby. It's a simple thing. And the other one is make energy less CO2 intensive. So stop using petroleum, use other bits and pieces as well. And the other thing to keep in mind with this is that it's not just the CO2. If you look at the book Clearing the Air by Tim Smedley, it shows you that it's not just the CO2 we have to worry about, it's the particulate matter. So whenever we switch over from just going from oil to possibly going to biomass, there's particulate matter there with people who have asthma and other breathing conditions. They will actually be slightly more affected by this, and that's what the smog of London came from originally. It's a great book, have a read of it, and he's also a lovely guy. Follow him on Twitter. Just plugging other random people as we go through here. And then this is the real map of Ireland. So this is the oceans that Ireland has around it, excluding Northern Ireland. I'm not being mean here. I'm not choosing a side or anything. So Ireland has roughly around 900,000 kilometres squared offshore, not including Northern Ireland. Wind energy is between 2.7 to 30 megawatts per kilometre squared, including spacing of wind turbines. So Ireland has the potential for 1 to 5 million gigawatt hours, which is the approximate equivalent of 923 million barrels of oil off the shore of Ireland. So this was David Rooney, Professor David Rooney at Queen's showed me this before. He was doing a talk up at Letterkenny, did these numbers. So I'm just kind of, if I've messed up the numbers, it's okay. The numbers are in and around there, but we have the equivalent of oil off the coast of Ireland that we can utilise. And that's all the big picture stuff. And here's another one. Carbon pricing is another thing which is coming in, and it's continuously talked about for people because we need to decarbonize somehow, so you can charge people to emit. And as you can see there recently, it's started to come up as the supply of carbon stocks have come down. How did we do something about that? Because that's all great. That's all building offshore wind platforms. That's all decarbonizing. What can we do? So I came across this as a student and I did this, which is a cup. And you're kind of going, what's the point in a cup? It starts as a cup. We looked at Engineers Without Borders, which is what I was a part of at the time. And we tried this. And so you brought the cup along and you gave it to Creme and they gave you a bit of money off. You guys now know Creme as Junction, which is down in the nice new building. And how did we get people involved in it? Well, we didn't turn around and bang the table as passionate environmentalists. That's what I did. My other friends kind of told me to chill it out a wee bit more. So we started to do talent shows. That drew people into what we were doing. So people came along and went, oh, Engineers Without Borders, they're the guys who hold the talent shows. They're the guys who hold Blind Date. And then that's what we did. The guys who won it that year did Mean Girls, the Christmas song from Mean Girls. We then hosted a nuclear debate where you can see John Barry standing in the front there again. He's always involved with these things. And we then had a debate where people could hear from nuclear experts and hear what people were actually trying to think about. And then from all of that, we then got awards from Green at Queen's. Green at Queen's gave us the initial grant to actually start this program. So that's what we were getting there. Then the QEB example. So this is where it kind of boiled down to for me whenever we started this. So as an example, there's 24,695 students at Queen's. I did not count you all individually. I promise. I didn't go around counting. I took it off Wikipedia. I know it's a terrible resource. I should have found a better citation software. But if everyone had one coffee or hot drink or hot chocolate a week, that's 500,000 cups to landfill. Or yeah, 500,000 cups to landfill during term time for 24 weeks of the year that you're there. That's not including the ones you have at the weekend. That's not including anything like that there. That's just during term time. Then if everyone has one a day, which most of us do, then it suddenly soars to 2.9 million. With the average cup being 300 grams, it's a lot of waste. It's tons, it's hundreds of tons just in cups. And this is why I kind of got the moniker whenever I was walking around my building of "there goes the cup guy," because it was all I talked about. It was like, look at how big this problem is. It was the thing I was focused on, but it was how I was helping. So then we turned around and we changed the design of the cup. We got more people involved with Engineers Without Borders. We got it into the centre, and then we became COVET. And it's not just a coffee. And at this point, we started to play about with things. So we got more stores involved, and there was about 15 stores involved, and I got to cycle everywhere. So I put them on a backpack. I cycled these cups all over the place, and everyone was going, "Why are you doing it?" And I was like, "Reduce carbon emissions. I'll get it there." Until I started to realize I was trying to deliver 30 cups in a day, and 30 cups don't fit in the backpack, so I was doing a lot of cycling about the place. But it was this kind of idea, which is just a circular economy with cups. It was simple for us to do. It's how we could make a change. It's how we could benefit everyone. And it's never about that there. It's just about what you can do. Do something for you. So what can we do? Because one simply does not fix climate change. You just can't do it. So I wrote this article before with Belfast Live just to kind of show. So these numbers are all based on a 10-mile journey around Belfast. So if you commute 10 miles, which isn't that much daily, to be honest with it, but a lot of people do come from further afield. It takes you the same amount of time to cycle as it does to take your car if you travel at peak times, okay? And instead of getting 234 calories burnt from sitting just doing your commute, you can burn 2,000 calories. It means you don't need a gym membership. It means you can relax more in the evenings. It means you can have ice cream. Always a positive to have some ice cream. So all these things. For me, I lived in Bangor during my entire PhD, and I was going, I could get the train, but I need to be in early and I've got things to do after. And I was going, okay, so how can I do it? Travel at non-peak times. I used to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I know everyone is sitting there probably at home going, you woke up at 5:30 in the morning? Jeez, why'd you do that? I was like, I'd leave at 6 in the morning, and it meant then that I wasn't traveling at peak times. It meant my car then got more efficient. I did a calculation there for this talk today, which I worked out over the 3 years of my PhD. I saved anywhere between 6 and 16 tons of CO2 just by traveling at non-peak times. That's a massive saving. If you can, take someone else with you. It halves the carbon emissions. It means there's less cars kicking about as well, but try and take people who would only take the car. Don't go taking your mate off the train to bring them in the car to make yourself feel better. Take somebody else who's going to take a car. In my household, we were all taking our cars because we were all looking for convenience. There was two people, like myself. I could have taken somebody else up to Belfast or brought somebody else back down. Just even cutting one of those journeys down saves a huge amount. Do longer journeys as the car's already warm. This is the chemical engineer side of me coming out now. It's like, whoa, catalysis. Once the engine's warm, keep using it because the catalytic converter is active. Because if you turn it on a cold morning and all that there, that's the NOx, the SOx, the nasty chemicals which are coming out the back end of that engine. So if you can get rid of that, then it'll actually operate more efficiently. 56% of car journeys are less than 5 miles. That's everyone just going, I can't be bothered to go, like I'll go around and visit somebody and I'll come back. 6% are less than a mile. That's everyone whenever they're hungover and they're just wanting something from the shop and they're like, I'm not walking in the rain, I'm just going to just get in the car and go on there. But it's these simple things, it's these small changes. If we get rid of those 56% of journeys and make sure that everyone's traveling a distance for it, that's it. Just think whenever you get in your car, could I walk here? Could I cycle here? Because it makes a huge difference. Food. I didn't just put a picture of two men with their tops off, you know, just for all the ladies in the audience. I didn't do it. That was a comparison between a meat diet and a vegan diet, which has recently been done. It was based on twins. They just ate differently. I myself have went to Flexi-Vegan kind of thing, where I try and eat as vegan as possible most of the time. But I still love eggs and I still love yogurt. But I'm not going to go out and eat a steak every day. It's that kind of thinking. First things first, eat less meat. It's that simple. The way it was put to me whenever I was talking about this before is, could you farm a cow every single day? So if you wanted to have beef every day, could you have a cow sitting outside your house that you were prepared to slaughter every day? So 365 cows, you're feeding them, you're keeping them going. Probably not. So think like that. Think if you were farming it yourself, what you could actually get through in a day or in a year. Eat local products which are in season. If it's local and it's in season, it means it's not traveled far. It's not had to be saved up. It's not had to do anything like that there. There's loads and loads of papers. Like, there's just one example of a paper that's put there from Science Direct. Have a look at it. It shows you some of these things. Don't throw items away. Currently, we have enough food to feed the world. About 30 to 50% of food is chucked in the bin. And then it goes on to make compost and goes on to make all this lovely stuff. We just need to get more efficient at using our food and using it well. Don't turn around and go, oh, look, I've got this or I've got that. If it's got something there, just plan your meals out accordingly. I know it's very, very boring to kind of be like, I'm going to have pizza this day. But if you do it all right, you can make sure that that cheese doesn't go off. And fresh, unprocessed food is always best. It's a case of, if you can go down, like we have someone who sells their fruit and veg down the road from us. And it's a case of, you can go there and they sell it right outside of Dunnes stores. You can get it off both of them. One, the mushrooms are probably coming from somewhere else, but the other one I can point out, they can point on a map and go, it comes from here. It shortens that supply chain. Clothes. Now, specific energy consumption and CO2 emissions for the production of one piece of knitted garment from dyed finished fabric was found as between 0.78 and 1.44 megajoules per piece, and 0.09 to 0.17 kilograms of CO2 per piece. That's just one published paper, which shows that. That is an enormous amount of energy just to think about it. But like, if you open up your cupboard and look in the wardrobe and go, how many items of clothes do I have there? How much energy, fabrics, and CO2 is just sitting there looking back at you? The following statistics are from the UN and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Every year, the fashion industry uses 93 billion cubic meters of water. That's an eye-watering amount of water. That's enough consumption to meet the needs of 5 million people. And water is going to become the single hardest thing to get over the next couple of years. We're going to run into a water crisis at some point. Of the total fibre input used in clothing, 87% of it is incinerated or disposed of in landfill. It's humongous now, and a lot of the big fashion houses have started to see this, and they've been pushed back now, and it's got to keep coming, because that is an inordinate amount of waste. Fashion industry is responsible for 10% of annual global carbon emissions, more than international flights and maritime shipping combined. At this pace, the fashion industry's greenhouse emissions will surge more than 50% by 2030. I'm not sitting here going, I don't go out and buy new clothes. We all do, okay? I am not sitting here as a saint. But what do? We repair clothes. I have pairs of jeans which have holes in them. The non-fashionable kind of holes in them. Okay, I know people are sitting there going, but holes in clothes are cool. Repair your clothes. Learn to sew. It's great. Borrow rather than buy clothes. Okay, now this is where you start to size up your friends and be like, are they the right size? Are they the right size? Could I borrow something off them? It's great. It is great fun to be able to do that. Blokes don't do it enough. And I mean this, men are most guilty of this. They don't borrow other one's clothes because they find it's quite weird. Local products, local producers. Go to local places. Go to St. George's Market in Belfast. Go to other places and start to ask people. Just be honest with people and go, where did that come from? Where did the wool for that come from? Is it from a sheep here? Did you make it here? Because a lot of people will be happy to tell you all about it. That's their selling point of their business. And make your own with local products. I have recently learned to knit, which is quite funny for some people to see. And it's also because I've got the least dexterity of anyone in the world. And it is helpful. I started off with a scarf, as everyone does. I'm currently knitting hats because I'm follically challenged, and it really helps in the colder weather. I also knit other little bits and pieces, but it helps. I can pick where my product comes from, and I can see the amount of time and energy. It also saves me about 20 hours of having to go and spend money on something else. It's a way of doing it, which is entertaining. And it's also a fun thing to get into a knitting group about. It's something to talk about. Disposables. I'm a huge advocate for disposables, as you can see by COVET. It's a simple change. I'm also the person who shows up to everything at the minute with their cutlery. I come with my own fork, my own knife, my own spoon. Before all of this happened, I actually got on a flight, and at security, I had forgotten that my fork and knife were in there. So I beeped going through security, and I was like, oh no, they've taken my bag, I'm going to be late for my flight. It was actually because my fork and my knife were in there, and they took out my fork and my knife, and they were like, you can't take these on the plane with you. I was like, I'm so sorry. So that was it. It's the same thing here. It's just find someone's, I've put the refill quarter down there. They're great guys as well. Pop in, take your own containers, you can fill up on stuff. And then there's the impact of a coffee cup. Most coffee cups you have to use between 20 and 30 times to get payback on them. A ceramic cup is 300 times. And it's this as well. If you've forgotten them, like we all do, like I've bought my bag with a water bottle, with a coffee cup, and then I have overhang in the back. You don't need to do that. I'm a bit weird, I understand that, but it's a case of sit in and have your food. I know in post-COVID times it is quite difficult to do that, but it's a case of it is a way to cut down on your carbon emissions. This is a big one, is repair and protect your devices. Your devices are absolute sinks for precious metals. So as you can see there, typical iPhone has a bit of gold, a bit of silver, a bit of palladium, and a bit of platinum. It also has aluminium and it has copper. That aluminium and copper is very, very expensive. And a lot of these products tend to come from the global south. So that's what John Barry was talking about last week. The global south in this equal transition is going to be quite difficult. I have here my phone. It is in a thick protective case. The only reason for that is because, yes, I am clumsy, but also I've had that phone for 2 years now. It's survived 2 years. I went to take it in to get a battery replaced, and it got replaced, and it's kept going. Once that phone eventually shuts down, I'll get a new phone. I'm still on an iPhone 6, no problems with it. So what do? See if the item can be repaired. See what can be repaired in. The laptop I'm talking to you off is from 2012. It had a new hard drive put into it because that was what it required at that point. And unless it breaks down at this point, it's still going well. Learn to repair and replace these items yourself. We have all got out of the habit of this, and I am one of the most guilty people for this. I couldn't replace the hard drive in this myself. I had to ask one of my friends to do it, and he kindly did it for me. So I got a hard drive, replaced it, but it saved me having to replace an entire laptop. You don't throw away a car because it needs a new tire. You shouldn't do the same with your phone or with your laptop. And protect your devices. You've just spent a lot of money on this. Never mind all the resources that are in them. Just buy a 30, 40 pound protective thing for it and keep it as long as possible. Now, the last bit, I'm putting Arnie up there, not because he'll be back or anything, but it's brought your own bag to the supermarket. You're getting that lovely halo effect. You're walking out and you get into your car then and drive away. It's like, how many people do this? One good action, it gives you permission to do something not so good. Oh, I didn't use a disposable cup all year. I'll take my flight to Thailand now. Oh no, I didn't drive anywhere all year. I'm going to go and do this. we do this whenever it comes to the gym and we treat ourselves to something overly calorific. We have 50 years of debt to pay off. It's a lot of debt that sits there, and we do need to work slowly through it. We don't all need to be perfect at this. It's the old adage of we don't all need to be perfect. We just need to be slightly better. It's all of us doing it badly, which is what we need almost at this point. It's everyone remembering a cup most days. It's everyone not driving everywhere. It's everyone trying to take public transport. And that's all it really is. It's everyone not eating meat every single day of the week. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope we've given you some facts that you can enjoy, and look forward to Q&A. So thank you.
Chris, I have a question. What would you say would be the most beneficial thing you could do if you were to do one thing?
This all comes down to relativity in terms of it. It's what do you do the most of that you can make the biggest impact with. It's if you're flying weekly, don't fly weekly. You know, that's the key part. If you're driving everywhere and you can make a big change, make it that way. Because a lot of the changes I've said there are behavioral changes. They're not ones which are going to economically impact you in any which way. And that's the big thing to do with it. So that would be it there. Mm-hmm. Catherine, what are your cups made of? Yep, our cups are made of polypropylene. So the reason they're made of polypropylene, polyethylene, and PET are three of the materials which can be broken down by the Bryden recycling. So our cups at the end of their life can be put back into the recycling system in Belfast, and they can be broken back down. There is a silicone grip which we're looking to get rid of because the silicone can't be broken down again. So that's why we're looking at that there. So there is going to be a third iteration of this where we're trying to make it completely out of polypropylene so that it can be done, and then eventually start to make it out of bio products. The issue with this whole industry at the minute is the 50% bamboo polypropylene blends that you see out there don't allow you to put it back into the recycling system because it doesn't break down as easily. So that's kind of the place that we've been looking at it from. It either has to be completely one thing so that it can be put into the recycling system. The recycling system can only cope with that polypropylene, polyethylene, and PET at the minute. What do you recommend as the most successful way to encourage others to cut down? I personally wouldn't go with my method of just continuously telling people, just use a cup. It's the first thing I would always kind of say to people is just do it yourself. If you can do it and show that it can be done, that's the hardest part to do, because you know where the shortcomings are in this then. So you can continually go through it and go. For me, whenever I was getting the train, I had a lot of kit with me, so I was bringing the stuff for the gym. I was playing American football at the time, and I was going into work, so to do my PhD. So I would have had a lot of stuff with me, and I went, I need the car there to do that. So I then looked at it and went, well, what's the easiest thing to do? And I was like, I'll just get up early and I'll go. Because if I get up early and go, that was the easiest way to do it. So it's almost showing people that it can be done with your own actions, and that was the easiest way for me to get people to cut down. The other one is strategically gifting things. People would get things from me which were strategically like, oh, here's a coffee cup, or here's some non-disposable cutlery. It was like sly gifting to try and help things the whole way along. So yeah, it's one of those topics which I would kind of do, and it's quite helpful with that. Should we be using natural materials for clothes? It's not something I would know off the top of my head, but I would recommend that natural sometimes is the best thing to do. It cuts down on microplastics going into the oceans and everything like that there. It's also, again, are your clothes, do the clothes need wash? You know, we wash things almost too often. It's like we've worn it once, time to put it away again. Can it be aired out? What else can be done with it? I'm not saying we all go around like mingers, but what I am saying here is we can reduce what we're doing, so it does help. And in that respect, that's a big help to it. Yes, as much as I can at the minute, I am trying to buy natural products, just because it does help that. But at points as well, this is the kind of balancing act that we're playing with. It is, it goes up and down. So Michael, are you taking over there? Or is he? I just see Michael saying something. No. It's kind of one of those difficult ones. I would always recommend that, yeah, natural's best, but then the amount of energy that you have to take into consideration to shear it, to clean it, to wash it, are you bleaching it, are you colouring it, how is that done? You have to look at the whole life cycle of this to kind of see what's happening. So is all recycling still being done outside the country? If so, what is stopping people in Northern Ireland? Or is that too long a question? This is a question which is being answered. So there is a grant at the minute which is in Queen's, which is on plastics. And this is something which we can look at. We don't have the materials to bring stuff in ourselves, so how would we actually help it? Okay, so if we said that everything that came into the country, all the plastics we'll deal with, we could do it and convert it back down. Currently, a lot of the places that were taking the recyclable materials are not anymore. So the likes of China, Taiwan, the Philippines are no longer taking the material from ourselves anymore. So it's starting to change ever so slightly in that respect. And the other part is you have a product there which can be transformed into various different things. It's at the end of its phase use. It's not at the end of its lifetime. And in that respect, that comes down to it, is if you've got plastic bottles sitting there, what else can they be used for? Can those plastic bottles be reused in their current form? No. Okay, well, what's the next thing that we can do with it? And then go on from there. And that would be the key thing, using the starting materials. For instance, in my research at the minute, I use coffee grounds for things, and people are like, why do you use coffee grounds? And it's like, coffee grounds can't, you can't just throw all these coffee grounds in the compost heap because they don't biodegrade naturally. Well, they don't go into compost quite well. So I look at transforming them, taking all the material out of them and using it kind of like a buffalo, like a Native American, to kind of take every little bit off it so that whatever I've left there, that can go into the environment as best as it can. So what do you think of those who deny the existence of climate change? This is where I have to actually be present and correct at all point. People are going to deny everything. It's the same as anything in the world. We're never going to be at a point where everyone is going to accept what is happening, because it's either economically not right for them, because they're making money off it, because they don't want to believe it's happening, because they don't want to believe the world they're living in is changing, or they don't want to believe that man can have this much of an effect. Personally, for me, it's one of those things which I have just come to learn and accept, is most people I speak to have read the evidence and go, this is it. There's someone in the building I work in who is a climate change denier. They just go, how could we do this? The world's been warming for years. I've just come to accept that that person probably won't change their mind. And I could present all the scientific evidence in the world. And that's why last week I asked John how he helps convince people, because it's still something which I struggle with. And it's something that we all realize how big this problem is. That's why we're all participating today. But it's then, how do you go, okay, how do I help those people? Sometimes it's just going to take them to realize themselves. We've got to all do our part to try and just help realize that. If somebody starts to ask you why you're driving a hybrid, or why you're taking the train everywhere, or why you're wearing natural fabrics, or why you're doing this, you can just explain it. We're not a cult. We are doing our bit here, and that's the main thing that we can do. So, do you think that the way we'd had to live differently during this pandemic has opened people's eyes to how they can live differently? Can we use this to propel the positive changes forward? I would say yes. I have never seen so many people out walking, so many people out running, I've never seen so many birds, different types of birds. Like, I've never seen a European goldfinch. That's from me sitting at my kitchen window looking out, really, because I'm trying to distract myself from work. But it's this kind of thing, is people have, for the first time in a long time, not been running about all over the place trying to change things. Like, it is a big way to help things, and we have got more knowledgeable about local supply chains, where our food comes from, And that's one of the key things with this, is how do we keep this going? It's so that whenever the normality almost comes back, that we don't just drop back into it. And yes, we can use that to propel ourselves forward into that. It's John's thing last week was build back better, and that's what we need to do. We need to start to go, okay, we're using less energy, that's what we're going to do, and any infrastructure that we then put in will be used to help it. The other one as well is Northern Ireland can have an entire cycle infrastructure. I think the figure I remember, if I remember this correctly, it's about 350 million. And that would do the entire cycle infrastructure for the entirety of Northern Ireland. So you could cycle the whole way from Portaferry up to the northwest if you wanted to. You could cycle right the way across. It would be a motorway network for bicycles, which would be fantastic. And that's something that we could get behind. It costs the same amount in Wales to do like an 8-mile stretch of motorway. It's nuts, like the amount of money that you have to spend on this. And it's the same with all of the wind turbines and everything like that. It's a case of, we can start to do that now. We know what the energy demands are. We can work from home, so we don't have to travel as much. These types of things which were pie in the sky thinking before are no longer pie in the sky thinking. I was told I was a blue sky thinker before, and people are now going, oh, that's actually a good idea. We could do this, we could do that. As well, it's like cycling everywhere. If there's less cars on the road, people feel better to cycle. If there's more people cycling, infrastructure creeps in. It's all a catch-22 in certain respects, so hopefully it catches on. How do we persuade the people with the very carbon-intensive lifestyles to significantly reduce their carbon footprint? I am not a social person. I'm not the social kind of economist person to persuade people in that respect. I'm an engineer at the end of the day. I always look at, can you engineer a solution to make it better, to make it less carbon intensive? A lot of these are how to help it. And that's the biggest thing is, you know, the people who you see flying about in private jets and the people you see driving multiple cars about the place, for them, that's in their head. That's what they have to do. We don't have to do that. And it's a case of, if you are doing that, how do you make sure that that isn't affecting overall? I think what it's eventually going to come down to is something along the lines of a carbon budget, where you have a carbon budget for the year of you as a person, and you can spend it any which way you want, similar to universal basic income, where it's a case of, if you get this amount of tons of CO2 to put out a year, you can choose however you want to do it, and it's just like a credit card. If you want to run it up, pay it off at some point, but at some point somebody's got to start to make these inroads to it. I don't know how to significantly influence people, I'm afraid. I'm not that person. Can we achieve the necessary change without government regulation? For example, in construction, we can easily build better, but building regulations are so far behind capability. I'm sure there are similar examples in other sectors. There are examples in other sectors. There's tons of them. And the government regulation, this is one that you would need to have a conversation again with a lot of the politics guys and a lot of building regulations. It comes down for me to this, which is whenever you're looking at this, the government regulations set in to go, oh, we need to use less CO2. And then they go, just make it happen. And businesses are businesses at this point. So what they do is they go, how do we cut the cost? Because the cost and profitability of a company is the biggest thing for them. So they turn around and go, okay, well, a thing which is going to be greener is more expensive, so they just go, I'm not going to do it. And they go, we'll cut CO2 everywhere else, and then they'll put it in. So they'll do lowest hanging fruit first. What we need to look at here is, if you do something, it's a both a carrot and a stick scenario. It's a case of, if you do it, you're going to get a benefit. If you don't do it, you're going to get a negative. And that's how we were working it. Whenever we were looking at this with COVET, we were going, how do we help encourage people? So there was money off for their coffee, but that doesn't speak to a lot of people. So what we had got a few shops to do as well was, some shops were charging you to get a paper cup. And then that completely changes people's mindset. And then we got other shops to do, you get money off with a paper cup, you get this money if you sit in, and you get this money if you take a paper cup. So there was 3 different levels of it, and people could make of it whatever they wanted. And that's the way you're probably going to have to go with some of this regulation. What's currently happening is the carbon price in there that you saw, the EU has stated that the carbon pricing should be between 30 to €100 per tonne of CO2 produced. That's great. The carbon price in the European emissions trading system, the price of carbon, the peak price that it's been at the minute is €25, so it's not at the EU regulatory price. And then the governments in the UK and Ireland have set their carbon taxes lower. So what it means is they're charging you less than what it should be. So there's no hard and fast route, because people want to keep growing their economies without getting greener, and they don't want to jeopardize their economies without being, so this is going to be the continual battle, is how do you separate CO2, energy and your GDP, so that people don't feel like that's the problem. And then within different sectors that will come along as well, and it's probably going to be our issue to kind of deal with at this point. So do you think the biggest impact an individual can have on reducing their carbon footprint is not to have children, stroke adopt instead of procreate? It's a very, very personal subject. And from my own perspective, I understand a lot of people not wanting to have children because of the current situation that we're in. I also think I can understand why people want to have children, because it's a very personal thing. They want to, we as a species, and this is from a species point of view, have a desire to procreate. So we want to see our genetics passed on, and it is a very difficult thing in that respect. We as highly evolved intellectuals as well continually turn around and go, what's the point if these children are going to die at some point in the future? Maybe not the next generation or the generation after that, but they're going to live in some form of despair at some point. And I completely get that. Personally, for me, I understand there is a high carbon footprint of bringing a child into the world. But I wouldn't draw a line. It's not a binary decision at that point. It's not a 1-0 approach. It is a case of how you want to bring that child up as well. And it's a societal impact as well. How come John didn't get that question? Like, that would have been a perfect question for Professor John Barry, not me. Like, everyone's got so much more confident this week. But it's just one other thing for you is whenever you're sitting there and you're thinking about what can I do, it's don't think, oh, I can't do that. It's how do you start to make those small changes? Do you need to take the car so many different days, or do you need to eat all that there? In your business, how did you find the balance between the different pillars of sustainability? Oh, we kind of found it very difficult at the beginning. And what we did was we looked at just how do we get people to use it? Because if we get people to use it, then if people are using it, then they'll reduce their carbon footprint. And that's kind of what we looked at initially. So it was just getting it in people's hands. The other part with it as well is, yeah, you see, you've got the Queen's one, you've got the flashy one. Then what we did was we turned around and went, are we going to run this as a business, or are we going to run this as a social venture? A lot of these things can't run as businesses. Just for the matter of fact about it is, it's very difficult to run these as a profitable business, because people don't want to pay for it if it's going to be expensive. Like, whenever we were looking at pricing these things, it was a case of it was £2, £3, £4. As soon as somebody had to bring out a note, they weren't going to invest in your business. They weren't going to invest in your idea. And that's why we went to enterprise issue. And I will always thank Judith and Kat over there. And if you have a chance, have a chat to them. They're fantastic people. But what we did was we sat down and went, what are we as a business? And as a business, we just went, how do we get more sustainable? So anywhere we could be more sustainable in terms of delivery, anything we had control over, that's what we took control of. So that's why I was out cycling the stores. I wouldn't drive unless it was absolutely necessary. There was a time when I had to drop 200 and 250 cups up to Queen's. I couldn't cycle those. It was impossible unless I had a flight case. So I just turned around and I rented a car, which is a hybrid car, and then drove the hybrid to do that drop off, because it was the most sustainable option at that point. That's kind of what we've been doing with it, is to get it there. And moving forward, we make sure that everything is sustainable in what we do, or as close to it as possible, because there's a social venture point and there's a business point. And the business point is, you know, we want to be at like this 100% sustainability approach, but as a business, you can only be at 80% at the minute. So let's get to 80, and then that other 20% we will figure out, and we will get there, and we will figure out how we're going to offset that. That as a business is how you do it. As people, as individuals, we can make bigger changes than that. And that's what we do. And that's how we kind of struck that balance at this point. It's always evolved, and it's never kind of set. We'll always do something as sustainably as humanly possible. Hope that answers the question. I hope it just doesn't sound like I'm dodging it all over the place.
Chris, do you ever see a possibility that maybe the government could subsidise the difference in cost between sustainable and unsustainable? Is that a fantasy? Yeah.
No, it's not a fantasy. So at the minute, okay, I just know the Irish facts, which are in Ireland, I think it's between 4 and 6 billion a year between 2012 and 2016 was paid to fossil fuels. So that amount of money was being paid to keep the price of fossil fuels down. So we're in essence paying at the minute on our petrol and our oil and everything. We're not paying the real price. We're paying a subsidised price because the government is already paying out in that. Therefore, I think in the EU as a total, it was about 200 billion is paid to the fossil fuel industry in essence to keep the prices down. And I think that is entirely a possibility. You've got this difficulty in the socioeconomic balance where you would go, if you suddenly stop subsidizing fossil fuels, the minimum price of everything is going to go up. So you're going to put more people into fuel poverty and everything like that there. It's exactly as you say there, we can do it. As has been shown by all of this recently, is we can do whatever we set our minds to. It's a case of then going, which products are the most sustainable? Because we don't want to get into a first generation biofuel thing where we're suddenly, you know, having the food versus fuel debate. And we can start to subsidize certain things to actually make it better for people, and it's making it better for people who possibly can't get on that ladder as well. It's the people who can't afford maybe solar panels in their house, the people who can't afford a air heat pump.
It's like that's the just transition that John Murray will be talking about. Yeah,
it's the just transition. It's always that there, and making sure that people can move forward with it quite well, because we don't want to get into a point of view where we have a complete bunch of people who are completely green and people who have been left behind in that transition. We have to make sure that everyone transitions correctly and that has worked out well.
Oh, thank you. And just to check something as well, so you were saying there you've been the Irish figures. Would there be a similar then view of Northern Ireland, especially for like wind energy, renewable energies? Like, will we have a similar capacity?
We at the minute have a very limited capacity. So within Northern Ireland, what we have is we are part of the Crown Estate in Northern Ireland, and therefore you put out a license. We don't have a legislative point of view on how to actually implement it at the minute, which is the problem. We don't have a legislative point of view of how to put in offshore wind turbines, but we have a great tidal resource in Strangford Lough, and we also have great tidal resources off the north coast, and there is some wind energy there. We as a small island could probably use anaerobic digestion as well, though that's going back to gas and it's kind of a band-aid over a bullet wound. You can put in natural gas, which comes from cows and sheep and chickens, and do that there and push it through that way. And it's a way to actually help the transition through.
Okay. So the agricultural sector could be maybe the way forward in some way, anyway. Yeah.
On the agri sector, keep that going.
Thank you very much. So if there's any more questions, I'll leave. Yep, there's some more here. Oh, do we have a date for the next webinar? We're hoping potentially towards the end of July, but we'll be putting the information out when everything's confirmed. But we're hoping to have one once a month now going forward. So thank you. If there's no more questions, I just want to say thank you very much, Chris. That was very eye-opening, and yeah, I'll be getting on to the family today to work harder, definitely.
No, it's great. Thank you so much, guys, and it's a great job you're doing.
And thank you everyone for attending as well. Yeah, so that's it.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.